Last week I made these 3 buildings and none of them work. But that isn't because of some technical shortcoming, they kinda just don't have power. And that is a problem that I can definitely fix, and the only reason I didn't in the last episode is because the power draw of this entire system is 30,000 stress units, which is a whole lot. For reference, this windmill produces about 5,000 stress units, so I could go the route of just make 6 of these and that would work just fine. But while I could just build 6 more windmill buildings, I don't really want to, and shoving them underground isn't any better, because thus far in this build I haven't hidden anything away, so I want to make a power system that is visible, but also doesn't take up a ton of space like 6 of these things. And that means we have to take a step up the power ladder and move on to a steam engine. Now I have built a steam engine before this thing, but the issue is this one took me a whole 3 episodes to make, and I don't really want to spend that amount of time on this. Luckily though, steam engines are scalable. You can see that this one says boiler status max because this is a fully maxed out steam engine that gets us 294,000 stress units, but they don't need to be made this powerfully. We can make a steam engine that only produces 60,000 stress units instead of 290, and that would be more than enough to fuel our gold production system back at the village, and it would save us a ton of time because the reason this took 3 episodes to make is because these blaze burners are being fueled by blaze cake, which is an incredibly complicated production process. But if we use some lesser fuel source for them, we won't get as much power, but that's just fine, and we can fuel them with something like sticks or logs, any old fuel you can just throw in a furnace. So that's exactly what I'm going to do, and to get started, I just need to choose one of the many automatic fuel farms that Minecraft has to offer. We could farm bamboo, we could farm trees, we could even make an automatic nether treat farm and turn it into sticks if we wanted to, but there's definitely one option that is 100% the best. And that is trees, because the whole reason I'm trying to power this automatic gold production system is because I need golden apples to heal zombified villagers. And golden apples, of course, require normal apples, so I'm going to kill 2 birds with 1 stone here and make a tree farm that will produce logs to power the steam engine, and it will produce apples to make golden apples with. So now all there's left to do is just get building, but I'm not actually going to be making a normal oak tree farm, despite the fact that I've been gesturing at this tree constantly. Instead, I'm going to be making a dark oak tree farm, because oak trees and dark oak trees require the same amount of bone meal to grow, but dark oak trees are kinda just bigger, so you get more logs and apples per bone meal, which is absolutely great, because efficiency is key. With that little detail out of the way, I can actually get started, but before I do, I have to decide where to put this thing, because so far I have actually been making buildings for every single thing that I need in this village, as I mentioned earlier, so I don't want to just have it kind of be stuck underground. But a tree farm is a really hard building to make look good. They're kind of big and they need a lot of empty interior space so the tree has room to grow. So I think it would actually be better if we make something that is outside and open to the air that just has some border around it that makes it look like a tree farm. And by that I mean like a logging camp or something, and since that's not really a building that would be anywhere near the center of the village, I'm just going to shove it on the outskirts over here, kind of near this pumpkin patch. Speaking of that pumpkin patch, I actually decided to keep it around and make it a little bit bigger and fancier, and there's still glass here because I'm trying to force these pumpkins to grow where I want them to, and they are refusing to, and I waited like an hour, and now I just feel like I kind of need to record anyway. But once this glass is gone, this thing will just be super cute and very like pretty, and I really like it. It's completely non-functional detail, but it adds a little bit of character to the village, which I think is very nice. And of course, I also built the actual tree farm, which is honestly a lot less fun than this thing, because I love how it turned out so much. But we can go ahead and test this thing out, because I've got some saplings here, and if we go ahead and give this thing bone meal, it will actually try and bone meal these saplings, and hopefully a tree will grow and then get instantly cut down with Yes! Okay, it works perfectly. And it should give That's an issue. It should have planted more saplings than that, which is a little concerning, but I fixed it and it is now fully planting as many saplings as it is supposed to. It just wasn't distributing to the 2 planters that are in there correctly, and now it's all fixed, and this thing we'll kind of just keep generating wood and apples. If we go down here, it should just be dropping them all on the floor. And yeah, it produces quite a bit. We've gotten 4 stacks of logs already and 1 singular apple. But hey, the gold farm, once it's actually working, will only produce like enough for 7 an hour. So as long as it does that, we're good. And it's been like 2 minutes, so I think it'll work out. And now we enter the problem zone, because this thing has stopped working. Luckily, though, it's not because the mechanism has just, like, failed, because it's still going through all of the steps it's supposed to. As you can see, the hand is poking, the things occasionally come out of the ground to try to kill you, and it just doesn't have bone meal, so the trees aren't growing. And they will grow eventually naturally, but that will take forever and not have rates nearly high enough for what we need. So I'm just gonna build a bone meal farm, because honestly, I need it. Not only does this thing require bone meal to fuel the steam engine and also just the golden apple production, I also need bone meal for various other things, like growing all of these pumpkin stalks for this pumpkin patch that required a strangely large amount. And anytime I need bone meal, my current plan of action is go to the nether and mine fossils, which is horrible. I die like half the time I do it, so having a bone meal farm will be super nice. But for bone meal farms, there's like a billion different options, but they mainly fit into 2 different categories. One is you can make a skeleton farm with just a normal mob farm, kill just the skeletons and get bones, therefore bone meal. It works great, but it's kind of big, and I totally have space for it, but just like a tree farm, building a building for that is gonna suck, so I'm not gonna be going with that one. And the other way to do it is composters. Essentially just make an automatic farm for literally any plant except bamboo for some reason, throw it in a composter, and boom, you got bone meal. But there's one plant that really rises above the rest. For some reason, moss, which is the only plant that requires bone meal to grow, is by far the best for a composter-based bone meal farm, so that's what I'm gonna build. I kind of have a love-hate relationship with moss-based bone meal farms. On one hand, they are absolutely the best. They generate so much stuff ridiculously quickly, but also every single time that I've tried to build one, I have failed miserably. But luckily, there are a lot of people on the internet that are a lot smarter than me, specifically in this case, LimBryn, whose design I'll be using for this video, and if you want to build it yourself, it will be in the description. But he has made one that actually works and also is completely ridiculous in terms of rates. I mean, I think this thing generates like 25,000 bone meal an hour, which is so over the top, and I absolutely love it. But I should probably stop geeking out about how cool this thing is going to be and actually get building on it. Which means I have to come up with a place to put this thing, and that's something that I generally have a weirdly large amount of trouble with, but not this time because there's actually some requirements that are going to make it very easy to decide where to put this thing. Firstly, it just kind of has to be near this because the bone meal is going to the tree farm, so I don't want to make a giant underground conveyor belt to get it there, which means it's kind of going to be somewhere in this general area, but I'm thinking over here just so it's a little bit closer to the center of town. And the second requirement is it has to be underground. This thing is giant and I do not want to build a building over it, so I'm gonna put it down here somewhere, and I can't really put it right next to this farm because there's this thing here, so we're just gonna go a little bit further this way and put it under this hill. And I've gone ahead and designed something that's actually kind of pretty for this one, so let's do it in a time lapse. This is by far the biggest build I have made in a long while. It has 3 whole separate buildings, you know, counting this secret garden as a building, but also if we go into this secret garden, you can see a little bit down here of the absolutely enormous bone meal farm that is completely hidden underground, and honestly, I'm almost a little sad that I have to hide this thing away. I mean, redstone contraptions like this just look so cool with like the repeated tiling and then also just the really complex circuits out the front. But more important than this thing looking cool is it is incredibly efficient. If we head into the first building here, most of it is completely decorative. The upper 2 floors are just mostly empty and useless, but if we head down to the basement, there is a nice little sign here that happens to tell us how much bone meal this has produced, and that is 1,700 bone meal, which is absolutely ridiculous. And that was just me running it in the time after I built it, and I was like fixing all the little things that the schematic cannon got wrong. But this thing just like goes, and we can just watch this number. It takes a second to get started because the moss has to like go through the composters, but then this thing just like skyrockets. Because like I said earlier, I believe it gets 25,000 bone meal per hour, although I'm not actually 100% sure about that, so don't quote me on it. But any second now, yeah, this number just starts to go up, and it just kind of like keeps going at this rate as long as I leave the farm on. But also, it's very loud, and also I'm pretty sure it lags my game a little bit just because the amount of items that come out of it. But other than that, absolutely amazing farm. And more importantly, it will produce more than enough bone meal to power the entire tree farm. So let's go ahead and actually hook that up, because I've made this little output thingy with this lever's off right now. But if we turn it on for a second, you get some bone meal. This is for like general purposes, but if we head down here, that chest is not the only storage. I've also set up this item vault that you can kind of see, which has a capacity of 101,000 bone meal, which at the rate this thing produces it, if I just leave it on, honestly, this will fill up kind of fast. But this lever is currently preventing any bone meal from actually going over to the tree farm, and if we flick it off, all of the bone meal that I just generated will leave, but it will actually clog up the entire system pretty fast. Yeah, it's already here. And now the tree farm should be producing wood like there is no tomorrow, and all I have to store that wood right now is this double chest that's somewhere around here. There it is, and it's already more than half full. So we should really get going on that steam engine, start using up some of this wood, shouldn't we? So, where do I want to put this thing? Well, like the moss farm, it's really easy because it has an input and an output, and both of them are pretty much right next to each other. It's getting wood from the tree farm, and it is outputting power that is going to go to these 3 buildings. So, it's just going to go right next to them, right here, I think, because there's a nice little empty place in the road here, and I kind of don't want to have, like, this road that's, like, bordered on one side by, like, a full-on wall that's, like, a little high, and then on the other side, just nothing, because, I don't know, it just feels weird to have such an empty space. That's mostly why I built, like, this pumpkin patch earlier, because it feels weird to have a road with, like, something significant on one side and then just nothing. So, I'm going to put it here, which should fill this space very nicely, and kind of make an end cap to this side of the village, which is exactly what I want to do, because it's getting a bit long. Like, that's the furthest, like, that's going to be the end of the village over there. It goes all the way this way, which I think is plenty of space for everything I want to build. I also just don't want to make it any longer than this, partially because there's hills, and also it would just be way too long for any, like, functional walking around in it, which walking from one side to the other to, like, go to my nether portal is already, like, long enough that I have to do it so often that it's a tiny bit annoying. So we're going to end the village off here with the steam engine. And I'd say that turned out pretty good. I actually really love how this building went, because I've kind of fixed one of the things that I was kind of falling into that I don't really like, which is making these buildings super repetitive. And I haven't fully, like, gone against that with this one, but pretty much every building I've made is like log frame, either terracotta or wood or cobblestone inside the log frame, and that's about it. And then an A-frame roof in some weird thing to make it work with the shape of the building. But this one is a little bit different. It does still have an A-frame roof, but it has this little, like, bump in the A-frame, which I think actually helps a ton. And it has a tiny bit of this, like, smooth stone slab like the blacksmith has, and I think it actually looks really great. And the outside actually has some extra details with the steam engine just straight up being visible, which I think looks super good. And this building should be fully functional and ready to generate us a whole lot of power. In fact, I've already hooked up all of the systems to get logs from here over to the mechanics under the steam engine, so it should be perfectly good to go. The only thing is I actually turned off the log farm because it was getting a little bit much, so I just have to head down here without a pickaxe now and flip the lever that's down there to enable bone meal, to go to the tree farm, to enable logs, to go to the steam engine, and then everything should be powered and we should start to actually generate gold with these 3 buildings. There we go. Trees are growing and getting chopped down. I also went ahead and incorporated all of the extra wood that this thing had already produced. And I think it's overproducing a bit much because the line headed to the steam engine is completely clogged up. But that does mean this boiler is producing a crisp 65,000 stress units, and that is the perfect amount to power the gold production system. And by perfect, I mean it's about twice as much as it needs, but I bet this thing has already produced gold because these 3 buildings should be fully operational at this point. And if we head in here, that's perfect. Sand is getting washed into golden nuggets, and we have 6 gold ingots already. That is absolutely amazing. With this gold and the apples already being produced by the tree farm, we can finally make a fully automated golden apple crafter and zombify a whole lot of villagers, but I think that's going to have to wait till the next episode. And honestly, we have made so much progress in this one. We got the tree farm up and running, we got the moss farm up and running, and now we have the gold farm that I built in the last one actually being functional, which is amazing. And next time, we can make that golden apple system, we can zombify some villagers, and we might actually even get to the trading hall. And that, it will be amazing because so far this village project has taken forever. And honestly, I'm all for it. I love how everything here has turned out. And I really hope you enjoyed this latest project. But for now, I'll see you next time. Bye.